So hi everyone, good morning. Welcome to the last day of the conference. My name is Mengdi Huang and I am a research assistant at University of Chicago. Today I'll be giving a talk on self-transcendence or self-enhancement, people's conceptualization of meaning in relation to the self. I hope my talk can give a little insights on how to pursue the purpose and the most important goals in our life. So how do we determine whether a life is good or not? Consider these two examples. On the left-hand side, we have a political activist who advocates for human rights. Her life might be considered as meaningful, but not as happy. What about a party animal's life? Most people might think that he has a happy life, but not necessarily a meaningful one if he only parties around every day. Then how do we make these judgments? In other words, how are these judgments about meaning and happiness in life based on? In order to understand this question, we first need to know what makes life meaningful. Research on sources of meaning shows that there are two main categories that provide a sense of meaning in life. The first category is self-enhancement, which includes hedonism such as hobbies, personal growth, or achievements. For example, you might have milestones in your life such as a major promotion or building a family, and we call this major category as benefits to the self because it primarily provides benefits to ourselves. The second category is self-transcendence, which includes making social impact, volunteering, or helping people in need. And we call this major category benefits to society. If we talk about meaning, we have to mention meaning's cousin, happiness, which is also a key to a good life. Then what is the difference between meaning and happiness? According to the past literature, meaning is about being a giver, while happiness is about being a taker, suggesting happiness is more about hedonism and self-enhancement. However, research also shows that happiness can stem from self-transcendent sources, such as giving and helping. Since both meaning and happiness can stem from self-enhancement and self-transcendence, what's the difference between meaning and happiness in people's judgment? In other words, how is the judgment of meaning different from the judgment of happiness? Therefore, the current research aims to examine the role of self-enhancement and self-transcendence in people's judgments of meaning and happiness. We define self-transcendence as benefits to the self in the following studies, and we define self-transcendence as benefits to society in the following studies. So in study 1, which is an exploratory study, we had participants to rate 15 different jobs, which we have professions such as college professors, waiters, and drug dealers. And we had participants rate their agreements to 4 different statements. For example, this is a meaningful job, this is a happy job, this is a job that provides great contributions to society, and this is a job that provides a lot of benefits to the self. And we did correlation analysis on that. What we found is that in terms of people's meaning judgment, benefits to society is actually a much more stronger predictor than benefits to the self. And however, in terms of participants' happiness judgments, there is actually no difference between benefits to society and benefits to the self. So study 1 gives us some preliminary ideas of the difference between meaning and happiness. And in study 2, we directly examine the roles of benefits to society and benefits to self in people's judgment of happiness in a 2x2 experimental design using 4 different vignettes. Each represent a person's life. So as you can see on the table, we have 4 different conditions which each represent a vignette. And we ask people to rate if they think this person's life is meaningful or happy. What we found is that for participants' meaning judgment, as you can see from the left side, there is actually a difference between these two conditions, which are highlighted here. So for the blue highlighted condition, you can see as you can think of it as a doctor who works in a third world country who provides a lot of benefits to society, but not a lot of benefits to self. And for the condition highlighted in yellow, you can think of it as a clingy billionaire. So in terms of people's meaning judgment, people think that a third world country doctor has a much more meaningful life than a stingy billionaire. However, in terms of participants' judgment of happiness, there is actually no significant difference from of these 2 conditions. So the results of study 2 is very exciting, and therefore we wanted to build up, wanted to extend the results and test it with more data. So in study 3, we have a advice-giving paradigms. We ask participants to give advice to people who crazily in need of meaning or happiness. And we also give them 4 pieces of advice to increase meaning and happiness. So as you can see over here, we also have 4 different pieces of advice. What we found is that participants, when giving out advice, participants think that advice, which includes high benefits to society but low benefits to self, can produce more meaning than the advice that includes activities that provides low benefits to society but high benefits to self. And consistent with the results of study 2, and participants' happiness judgment, there is actually no difference between high society and low self-advice and low society, high self-advice. So the previous 3 studies examine participants' third-party judgment, in which we look at how participants judge other people's life. So we think that, okay, would participants use the same standard to judge or to view the meaning or happiness in their own life? So therefore, in study 4, we examine participants' first-party judgment of meaning and happiness, which study 4 is like a revised version of study 1. We had participants to rate their own jobs, and also we had participants to rate their agreements to 4 different statements. For example, my job is a meaningful job. And what we found is actually pretty surprising, because what we found is that in terms of meaning judgment, there is actually no difference between benefits to society and benefits to the self, which is pretty different from the result that we got from previous 3 studies. And in terms of happiness, benefits to the self is actually considered as a much more stronger predictor than benefits to society. So in study 5, we sought to extend the result of study 4, and we also did a revised study of study 3, in which we used a advice receiving paradigm, and we asked participants to rate 4 pieces of advice to increase their own meaning and happiness in life. What we found is that in order to increase meaning, there is actually no difference between participants' agreement in high society and low self-advice, and low society and high self-advice. And in order to increase happiness, low society, high self advice is actually considered as more happiness inducing than high self but low, high society but low self advice. So there seems to be a consistent discrepancy between participants' first party and third party judgment. Therefore, in study 6, we think that, okay, we might examine participants' actual feelings of meaning and happiness by letting them to engage in tasks that either provides benefits to society, for example, to help with a public health project, or participants, or a task that benefits participants themselves, which is to gain extra monetary rewards. What we found is that in terms of participants' happy feeling, there is actually no significant difference between benefits to the self-task and benefits to society task. However, participants felt much more meaningful after they completed the benefits to the society task than the benefits to the self-task. Therefore, to summarize, in terms of meaning judgment, in third-party judgment, benefits to society is actually weighted stronger than benefits to the self when participants is viewing other people's life. However, when participants view in their own life, there seems to be no significant difference between benefits to society and benefits to the self. And from the results of study 6, we can see that meaning is more about self-transcendence than happiness is, and and benefits to society is weighted heavier in meaning judgment than in happiness judgment. So how can we promote long-term well-doing and live a more meaningful life? The answer from this project seems to be that we should go beyond the self. So we can go out there and we can help people in need, do more volunteering, and to increase the meaning in our life. Thank you, everyone. That's the end of my presentation. I can stay until the last second if you have any questions or any places that you want me to clarify.
Okay,